The Oak Ridge Reservation holds an important place in our nation's history, and it continues to be a vital part of our national security and scientific research community. But parts of the reservation require cleanup as a result of decades of energy research. The U.S. Department of Energy looks to the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board as the voice of the community on environmental issues. You're welcome to attend meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board to learn more. Call us or visit our website.
Good evening, everybody. After that cat herding, I thank you very much for your cooperation on it. I would like to call to order the February 11th meeting of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board. Yes, I do, and it's always hot. And since I have a new microphone, I would like to remind the board members, please use your microphones when you are speaking. To be recognized, place your tent so that it can be seen by someone up here at the head table. We will take questions from the board members first, after the presentation, followed by members of the audience who wish to ask questions of the presenter. Make sure your electronic communication devices are off, phones are on silent or off, your pagers reduced, fax machines or what have you, turn them off too. We do have exits each end of the building. If you require assistance, someone will help you if you just let us know. Our next meeting will be 28 days from now. It'll be March 11th, and the presentation will focus on the state of the Oak Ridge Environmental Management Program and the fiscal year 2016 budget and prioritization planning. Tonight's presentation will discuss sufficient waste disposal capacity on the Oak Ridge Reservation, and our presenter is Laura Wilkerson, who is no stranger to this board at all. Video recordings, we do have the cameras running. However, after the motions section of the agenda, we will be turning the cameras off, but the microphones will stay on to record any and all of the comments made by the board members. And if you did look at the agenda, you may notice that item 10, where we have additions to the agenda, that has been added, additions to the agenda and open discussion period. It was felt that at the planning meeting and a couple executive committee meetings, that it might be an opportunity for members of the board to talk about anything that's on their mind pertaining to environmental management cleanup. Right now, since we're in the infancy of this, we're just going to kind of leave that as a kind of like an open line Friday where you can just talk. If it gets to where it becomes fairly popular, we may ask for agendas or requests in advance. But right now, it's just going to be kind of an open opportunity. And at this point, I think we will want to get along with Section B of Part 1 of our agenda. We do have 4 new members, which I'd personally like to welcome to the board. We're glad to have you, and Ms. Kanes, if you would introduce our new members to us, that'd be greatly appreciated.
I'd be happy to. Good evening, everybody. I want to add my welcome to Dave's, to the new members of the board. We're very excited to have all of you, and particularly excited to have 4 of you at one time. So that's very good. We're filling up all our positions here. So first is Mr. Leon Baker. Leon, say hello, stand up. Thank you. Leon lives in Oak Ridge and is a logistics coordinator with Dow Chemical. He previously worked as a health physicist technician with DNUC, which provides a variety of services to the nuclear industry. Leon has also worked with the Energy Employees Occupational Illness Compensation Program through the Oak Ridge Associated Universities. He's a member of the NAACP and the Health Physics Society. And again, I want to wish you a warm welcome. We look forward to working with you during your time on the board. Next, we have Mr. Richard Burrows. Richard, say hello. Richard has served as the Chief of Staff in the Anderson County Mayor's Office since 2012. Prior to that, he worked for 25 years, primarily both with RCRA and CERCLA projects in a variety of states as a registered professional geologist with extensive hydrogeological experience in aquifer characterizations and remediation in soil and groundwater. Richard also lives in Oak Ridge. So welcome to you as well. Third, we have Terry Likens down at the end there. Welcome, Terry. Terry lives in Kingston and is the editor of the Roane County News. She's worked in several states since 1988 as an editor, reporter, and freelance journalist, and she has received numerous honors for her work from a number of organizations, including several dozen awards from the Press Association. Terry is a member of CASA of the Tennessee Heartland, the Tennessee Press Association, and Conservation's Fisheries. So welcome to you, Terry. And our last new member, Ed Trujillo. Hello, Ed. Did I say that right? Trujillo? Thank you. Ed also lives in Oak Ridge and is a retired project manager who most recently worked for Bechtel, managing engineering and construction of a maintenance facility for heavy-duty mining equipment at the BHP Billiton Escondida mine. All right. This is a mine in Chile, so you have returned from being overseas. From 2008 to 2011, Ed managed 3 environmental projects for Bechtel at the East Tennessee Technology Park. And during his 35-year career, he's worked on a wide variety of projects for the Department of Energy, the Air Force, and private sector facilities. So thank you, and welcome to you as well. Again, I'm really pleased that we have 4 such distinguished new members to add to our board. I hope you guys find this to be both interesting and rewarding.
Thank you, Ms. Cage. In case many of you didn't know it, Sue has been acting as the EM's Oak Ridge office manager since May of 2014. She served as deputy manager since March of 2011. Just recently, like January 29th, Sue was promoted to the manager of the Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management, and I think that deserves a round of applause. Congratulations on that, Sue, and it's looking forward very much so to work with you. I also received an email from the Oak Ridge Partnership. They would like to invite all of the Site-Specific Advisory Board members to a reception to celebrate the recent announcement of Sue Kane as manager of the DOE Oak Ridge Environmental Management Program. It will take place at Oak Ridge ORAU's Pollard Auditorium Atrium on Thursday, that's this coming Thursday, not tomorrow, the 19th at 5 to 7 o'clock. And there was a note here that was very important that they asked me to say. It says, there will be balloons. So I hope as many of you that can make it next Thursday, please be there. Unfortunately, I will be out of town that day. So, but congratulations, Sue. It's been a long time in coming. Glad you got it. We hate to have to break in a new manager. Yeah. Okay. Comments from the Deputy Designated Federal Officer, the DOE, EPA, and TDEC. You know, I used in acronyms. The Deputy Designated Federal Officer, Ms. Kanes.
All right. So thank you all very much for your warm reception to the big news. I'm very excited to have been selected. I really feel quite honored to have been selected, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work directly with the Site-Specific Advisory Board since I have in 2011. So that won't change. Just a couple of things I wanted to tell you all about. First of all, our most active demolition project that is currently underway is the demolition of the K31 building, which is a former gaseous diffusion process building at the East Tennessee Technology Park, is underway. We are at about the 50% completion mark, which is really quite significant for that building. We anticipate completing demolition of that building this summer. And so that's just very exciting that we've hit the 50% mark, and I just wanted to share that with all of you. This is the fourth of 5 large process buildings at the former K-25 gaseous diffusion plant, and we anticipate that about a year from now, we will be starting on the demolition of the K-27 building, which is the last building out there that was used to enrich uranium. That will mean that we will be the first site in the world, really, that has completed demolition of our gaseous diffusion process buildings. There are many other buildings at the facility and also some groundwater and soils that need to be remediated, so we are not completing cleanup of the site, but it's still an important milestone for Oak Ridge and for the program. The other thing I wanted to let you guys know about is that we just completed today a 2-day workshop here in Oak Ridge. We called it the Gaseous Diffusion Plant Workshop, and we had about 75 people from the Oak Ridge, Portsmouth, and Paducah sites. There were 3 operating gaseous diffusion plants in our country, and they were at Oak Ridge, Portsmouth, Ohio, and Paducah, Kentucky. And all 3 sites are in various stages of cleanup. And so we pulled together representatives from all 3 sites as well as DOE headquarters and spent the last 2 days looking for opportunities for integration across the sites and also looking for ideas where we could improve on the efficiency and effectiveness of the cleanup program. So there will be some follow-on actions. That's always the case for these types of things. But it was a very successful workshop, and I think a really good step in the right direction for us to be communicating with our partners and making sure that we're sharing lessons learned and doing other information sharing. So that just concluded today, and thought I would share it with you. That's it. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Mr. Adler?
No comments from me.
Unusual. Thank you, Mr. Adler. Normally at this time of the meeting, we hear a voice on the phone. For those of you that don't know, Connie Jones from the Environmental Protection Agency in Atlanta is here in person tonight. Connie, it's good to see you. And do you have anything to offer tonight?
I think I would just like to take a few minutes to kind of respond to the fact that most of the time EPA doesn't have comments to offer or information to share because the designated federal official, deputy designated federal official, and Mr. Adler, they do a very good job of providing an overview of what goes on and the relationship of what occurs at DOE headquarters and at the site. Mr. Adler does a very good job of providing information what goes on with the projects. And as Sue just stated, most of the work that's going on at DOE is going on at the ETTP. And that's basically focusing on the demolition of the projects. Every now and then we may have information that we might want to emphasize or focus on, but most of the time we want to preserve the time for the board and the board members to be able to ask questions, to seek clarification. And with that, I don't have anything else to offer, but I'll be more than willing to attempt to answer questions if asked.
Are there any questions of Ms. Jones? That was very, very well put, very succinct, and very truthful. Thank you. Christoph Tedek?
For the sake of time, I'm not going to repeat the positions of Connie Jones, but I feel exactly the same way, and I have no comments tonight.
Thank you. We are catching up with the time. We greatly appreciate it. Public comment period. Ms. Rowcliffe, are you going to do that tonight? Yes. Okay, thank you.
The public comment period is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Doesn't look like so. So as a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate in our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown. Appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and DOE as those given in person. Meeting schedules and ways to communicate with the board can be obtained by calling 241-5 4583 or by visiting our website.
Thank you very much. Moving on, that'll bring us to the presentation portion of our meeting. Ms. Lyons, would you introduce our presenter tonight?
The presenter this evening will be Laura Wilkerson. Laura is the Portfolio Federal Project Director for the Y-12 National Security Complex, where she is responsible for American Recovery and Reinvestment Act work with a total budget of over $630 million. She also directs base environmental management operations with an annual budget of approximately $140 million. Laura has over 20 years of experience managing and directing technical programs and projects, and she holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Engineering. Please welcome Laura Wilkerson.
First of all, good evening, and thanks for having me back to talk about waste disposal capacity in the Oak Ridge Reservation. First wanted to point out the location of our current CERCLA disposal activities. The CERCLA environmental management, the EMWMF, or environmental management waste disposal facilities, located immediately west of the Y-12 site, and that's the area where primary waste management activities at Y-12 are located. I figure since there are several new members to the board that I start with a little bit of background on our existing CERCLA disposal cell, or EMWMF. And just wanted to show this schematic that shows the main components of the facility. The facility is an engineered earthen disposal facility, primarily above grade. It has a geologic buffer that is about 10 feet thick. Then it has a liner system that includes a leachate collection system that isolates the waste from the geologic buffer, and that's about another 5 feet. And then from the bottom of the waste to the top of the waste pile at the highest location is about 75 feet. And finally, we will place an engineered cover that would protect the facility from any water intrusion or any migration of contamination from the facility to the surrounding environment. The capacity of our existing CERCLA facility is 2.18 million cubic yards. And when the final cover is placed in the facility, will cover approximately 43 acres. This is a picture of our existing facility. We have 6 disposal cells. These cells were constructed on an as-needed basis. The first 2 cells are full. Cells 3, 4, and 5 are currently active. And cell 6 is planned to be active as soon as, I guess, we get close to utilizing the capacity of the other 3 remaining cells with capacity. The facility also has contact water ponds, leachate collection tanks, and contact water storage and trailers and other infrastructure that supports the operation of the site that I will point out later on how that's important in the siting of a new facility. So the facility to date is utilized at about 66%, is full 66%. We project that the remaining capacity will be utilized by the waste being generated by the cleanup of the East Tennessee Technology Park, and we will need a new facility or disposal capacity that is approximately equivalent to the facility that we currently have, in order to be able to complete the cleanup of the excess facilities at ORNL and Y-12 and the remediation of the soils needing remediation at those sites. This facility has been operating for approximately 13 years, and it has been safely and compliantly operated. We do monitoring on a quarterly basis of the groundwater, and there has been no indication of any migration of contamination outside the containment of the facility. One point that is really important for us to live and breathe this every day is that the ability to dispose of waste on site is key to the success of our program. And one good example of that is the completion of the demolition of the K-25 building. This is a before and an after picture. Approximately 86% of the demolition debris from the K-25 building demolition went to the existing circular disposal facility, and K-33 as well, a 32-acre building. So by having disposal capacity on site, we've been able to efficiently and effectively complete the demolition of these facilities. It is the most cost-effective way of disposing of this waste. We calculated when we issued the record of decision for the existing sale, we projected that we would save about $300 million over the life of the facility, and we have already reached about $500 million in avoided costs, and we are not completed with the utilization of the facility yet. So we hope that those costs are going to increase. Cost savings are going to increase as we move forward. It has the ability of allowing jobs to be maintained in East Tennessee, because any money that we save in disposal, hiring truck drivers and transporting the waste off-site can be invested in additional cleanup activity here in Oak Ridge. So it allows us to complete more cleanup and keep jobs in this region. From a public, environmental, and worker risk reduction perspective, it is the green thing to do. It eliminates about 130,000 driving miles. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and it also reduces worker exposure because it doesn't necessitate that the waste have to be handled as much as if it was being disposed off-site. This is not to get into a lot of detail here, but to make the point that this facility takes large quantities of waste that is low-level waste, low-level radioactive waste. So it's mainly intended for disposition of building demolition debris from our excess facilities that has low levels of contamination, soils that have low levels of contamination, and any secondary waste generated as a result of that cleanup, including personal protective equipment and so forth. It is not a facility to dispose of higher activity, low level waste, or spent fuel, or transuranic waste, or liquids, or anything that would represent a higher environmental risk and that we use other disposal paths for. This slide has a lot of data, but again, it is good in showing where we are in terms of predicting the capacity utilization and our future needs. Every year, we evaluate the utilization of the facility based on the waste that has been disposed of to that date, and also the sequencing of future projects, any refinement of future projects, waste generation estimates, and also considering the budgetary restrictions or budgetary projections for the project. So based on all those factors, we come up with a capacity utilization every year and a prediction of when we will run out of capacity and need additional capacity. So based on that, our most recent evaluation shows that we will be fully utilizing the existing capacity by the year 2024. And it seems like we have a lot of time to come up with a solution to address the future cleanup capacity needs, but we don't, because we have a schedule that requires that we have, if we are going to construct a new facility, that we have that facility in place at least 18 months before the existing facility is fully utilized, and that's for operational flexibility and efficiencies. And when you backtrack from 2024, 2 years, that's 2022, and we are in 2015, and from 2015 to 2022, we have to go through the CERCLA process, do all the CERCLA documentation, facility or site characterization, public involvement, facility design, any procurement. So there's a lot of activities that need to happen before we're able to begin site prepping and construction, which again, construction actually projected to start to be complete in 2022 to start in 2019 timeframe. So that just underscores the urgency of continuing with our planning and hopefully making some decisions in the near term of how we're going to address this need. We've initiated our CERCLA process, as I said before, a couple of years ago, started with the development of a remedial investigation and focused feasibility study. And in that study, we're evaluating 3 different alternatives. The first one is the no-action alternative, and it's basically not having a comprehensive waste disposal strategy for the Oak Ridge Reservation, but instead dealing with waste disposal on a project-by-project basis. The second alternative is on-site disposal, and that basically is evaluating whether a new disposal facility being constructed on site is the right alternative, and we have termed that new facility the Environmental Management Disposal Facility to kind of distinguish it from the EMWMF. The third alternative, of course, is off-site disposal, and that's basically transporting the waste to facilities out west that are permitted to accept this type of waste. There are currently 2 facilities, the DOE Nevada National Security Site and the Energy Solutions Commercial Facility in Utah. So as we go through this evaluation process, we are coming to the same conclusions that we came to when we did the original facility siting for the EMWMF. In terms of cost savings, over the life cycle of the new facility, we're projecting a cost savings of approximately $1 billion when compared to disposal off-site. Because of the cost savings, on-site disposal would help us accelerate cleanup because it would allow the dollars that are received to be utilized for cleanup instead of having to spend more on actual disposal activity. It reduces the public risk, again, because the transportation of the material is limited to on-site transportation. So the transportation risks are much lower, and also carbon emissions are much lower. This is a risk comparison chart for the on-site versus the off-site disposal option. As you can see, the risk to human accidents, even death, is significantly higher when you compare off-site with on-site, for off-site. It reduces program risk, and that's basically because it allows us to have control over our disposal capacity and how we plan and sequence projects. We don't have to depend on another site's prioritization of all the customers that they're getting waste from. We have the ability to control our own destiny, if you will, and make our own decisions on how to dispose of the waste in our own facility. It eliminates risk associated with having to go through multiple states to transport the waste to an off-site facility. And again, eliminates the risk of depending on the operation and waste acceptance of an off-site facility. And the good example is, the waste isolation pilot plant, which was recently shut down, if you will, as a result of a couple of operational events, and we are unable to send any waste to them until that gets all worked out. So not that we will ever have transuranic waste disposal in Oak Ridge, but if we would have had that on site, we wouldn't have to be waiting on the solution of those issues that have been uncovered by the events that happened last year in February. In evaluating the site for the new facility, we narrowed down the sites to 16 sites that we looked at across the Oak Ridge Reservation. We considered topography, hydrogeology, the available capacity for those sites, whether or not they provided sufficient area to develop capacity that would meet our needs, and future land use of those areas. And Just as with the original siting, we came to the conclusion that the preferred area for siting a new circle facility is the same area where the current facility resides, which is what we known as the East Bear Creek Valley, and that's the area that is outlined by this orange line right here. This is the location of the Environmental Management Waste Management Facility, or current circular disposal cell, and this is the proposed site for the proposed new circular cell. As you can see, these areas that are in dashed lines are former or historic waste disposal areas. So this whole area has a future land use designation of industrial land use, which is again compatible with waste management activity. You can barely see it here, but this is the Y12 site. So another benefit of this location is that the facility, access to the facility is controlled through access to the Y12 site. So it's isolated from the public and isolated from any access other than DOE access. Another benefit is that there are non-public roads from this area to both Y12 and ORNL, which are the two main sites that will be feeding waste to this new facility. So having the facility site here avoids waste traffic through non-public roads. And this location is consistent with stakeholder input when we cited the EMWMF. And so that's mainly the benefits of that proposed location. Another one, I almost forgot. If you recall, when I began the presentation, I mentioned that there were certain infrastructure features in the existing facility, so we would be able to benefit from having those features at that site and support the new facility with some of those infrastructure features that are currently supporting the existing facility. This is a conceptual diagram of the new facility. Just like the current facility, it's projected to have 6 disposal cells. Again, we would not build those 6 cells at once. We would do that on an as-needed basis. So just like we did for the existing facility, we would build 2 or 1 cell at a time, depending on what the waste projections are. Let's see, I think I've covered all that. There's one thing that this site has that is not unique to the majority of the potential sites in Oak Ridge, and that is it has a small stream that goes through the footprint of the facility. And so we would have to, including the design engineering features, to control the groundwater and the surface water migration through the facility. We have a French drain system in the existing facility, so it's not something that is new to us, but nevertheless, it has to be factored into that whole design and planning process. In terms of protectiveness, the processes that we have to follow and the regulations that govern the siting, design, construction, and operations, and finally closure of these facilities is driven by very strict regulatory requirements in RCRA, TSCA, DOE orders, and those basically represents layers of conservatism at each stage of planning and development and operation of the facility. So each siting requirements have their own restrictions, and then when we go through the design and construction phase, we have to apply very strict quality assurance requirements and comply with governing DOE orders. We get tri-party agreement on the waste acceptance criteria for the facility through the CERCLA process, so the regulators have to buy in on what is accepted for disposal at that facility. And finally, through the operations, there are safety basis requirements and other requirements and restrictions that add layer after layer of conservatism and robustness to the safe operation of the facility. As I said before, we have begun the CERCLA process, and as part of that, we submitted a draft of the remedial investigation feasibility study to the regulators. And part of the comments were that they needed some databases to help them make decisions as we move forward on whether or not they agree that this is the right site for this facility. So we agreed to do a preliminary characterization of the proposed site, and we began that in December of this year, and we will include 60 days worth of that characterization data in the next version of the remedial investigation feasibility study document to support the state's and EPA's decisions. And this is a picture of the characterization features that we have installed in the site. We installed 5 sets of groundwater wells and 3 surface water monitoring wells. And as I said, we've been collecting data since December. And the next version of the RIFAS is due in March, and we plan to include 60 days of that characterization. So far, the modeling that was done in the previous draft of the RIFAS in terms of groundwater elevations and soil characteristics are being confirmed by the characterization that we have done thus far. So there's no new surprises, if you will, to date from that data. This is our plan for completing the CERCLA process and getting all the way to operation of the new facility. As I said, it looks like a long time, but we're here in this box right here on the CERCLA process. We plan to complete the next draft of the RIFAS in March and a proposed plan in September of this year, and hopefully a record of decision in May of 2016. Both those 2 document processes include a public comment opportunity. So anybody that is interested in providing formal comments will have an opportunity when we issue the RIFAS, the next version of the RIFAS to the regulators, and then when we issue the proposed plan. So those will be available in the near term. Again, we have to complete a full year of characterization before the record of decision, so that's also part of the plans, beginning with the effort that we started in December. We are planning to begin the design effort in earnest in 2016-17 timeframe. There's a lot of pre-design, conceptual design type activity that happens before that, but the design effort would take over 2 years. Then we go through any procurement activity that is necessary, and we would be right on time to begin construction, site prep and construction in 2019 to have the first cells ready in 2022 when we're projecting that we will need them, which is 2 years in advance of when we reach the capacity of the existing facility. So again, it looks like a long time, but really it isn't. Just in summary, having the ability to dispose of waste on site is really important to us, to our ability to continue to make good progress and to effectively and efficiently spend the dollars that we get every year. We will need an additional capacity. That's a given if we are to complete the cleanup of ORNL and Y12. And that capacity is equivalent, again, to what we have today. There are many potential locations that were considered. We narrowed it down and ended up in the same place that we ended up through the first siting process. But we need to have a ROD in 2016 to support our schedule. And again, we'll continue to provide updates and opportunities for public input as we move forward. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkerson. Very well done again. Are there any questions of the board? Mr. Bell. Use the microphone, please, Jim. Thank you.
The new facility is very similar to the existing facility, but what is the difference in the two that requires a year and a half of design changes, as indicated on your diagram?
Yeah, that length of time is not atypical for designing a facility of this magnitude, but the main difference between the current facility and the new facility is that we have that stream, that small stream that goes right across the footprint, and it has to be engineered around to be able to make the facility feasible for disposal.
Okay. One more, please. You mentioned WIP is a problem being shut down, not being able to send something to that. I was under the impression that WIP was a plutonium waste facility.
Yeah, I was trying to give an example when we are not in full control of the disposal facility, how that can impact what we're able to do or not do at a given time. So it wasn't intended to.
But you're not shipping anything to WIP?
We were shipping our transuranic waste debris to WIP.
From Y12 or K25?
It's actually, we have a facility at ORNL
Okay.
that
All right.
repackages all the legacy transuranic waste from ORNL, historic operations, and some smaller amounts of newly generated waste.
One more, please, and then I'll quit.
Promise?
Yeah,
You heard.
in the cleanup of, and maybe it's for Sue as well, in the cleanup of K25, which looks to be just on the horizon, what happened and is planned for the nickel barriers?
That actually was a topic that came up today during our gaseous diffusion plant workshop. Scott made the mistake of bringing it up. And that material, Jimmy, is currently stored at the East Tennessee Technology Park in one of the facilities that is targeted ultimately to be transferred to our community reuse organization.
I'm sorry, transferred where?
Transferred to our community reuse organization, the facility where the nickel is currently stored.
Yeah.
And so we are evaluating options for that nickel that will range anywhere from potential reuse to potential disposal. And we'll, of course, have to ultimately execute some plan if we hope to transfer that property for reuse.
Thank you.
Ms. Caston, I believe you were next.
Do you have a definition for the lower activity? When you say the lower activity of the low-level waste, do you have a cutoff, or do you have a criteria for exactly?
There is a definition for low-level waste. I'm not sure that I can recite it, but.
Yeah, well, there are two answers. There is a legal definition for low-level waste, and there will be no non-low-level waste brought to this facility. But for the most part, this facility takes waste that are compared to waste acceptance criteria. So we have numeric values by radionuclide, which we can go up to on average. So it's actually specified radionuclide by radionuclide, and those tables are all available if you wanted to see
Now,
them.
do you survey the stuff, or do you use process knowledge, or both?
Both. There's a lot of money and a lot of sampling is dedicated to making sure that we know the pretty precise makeup of the waste streams we receive, so that there's a very strict accounting for the type of waste and the various concentrations of different constituents that are tracked on the way into the cell.
Okay, so all that will be maintained?
Yes. Yeah.
Would you come up, do you have a maximum amount of activity that you expect in that burial site? Is that defined? You know, like when it's full, do you have a number for?
There actually theoretically is. If you took the maximum allowable concentration of each radionuclide,
So
multiplied that by the maximum volume the facility is set up to receive, that would be the total Curie
You're doing
inventory.
that by a legal standard for your maximum concentration, you're determining from a legal standpoint from the regs that you come up with that number.
It is derived from regs in the sense that CERCLA is a regulation and the DOE orders are regulation, but what it's really keyed to is risk. They have a performance standard, basically that the facility is not allowed to have any significant impact on the groundwater or potential users of the groundwater, and they back calculate from this performance objective to allowable concentrations in the waste streams that come into the facility.
Okay, so when you do the disposal stuff, you don't come up with like a maximum design accident basis, you know, like do you come up with a maximum design accident scenario? Is that defined for this facility, or do they not do that for burial grounds?
For burial grounds of this type, they don't do accident failure analyses like they would for a nuclear power plant or other facilities that manage more highly radioactive materials. Basically, they deal with those types of considerations through the geotechnical features established for the facility. And then if, say, there were an earthquake, for example, that were to cause some damage to the facility, we'd have to come back and fix it. But the facility does involve very thick layers, basically of clayey material, so as to be positioned to deal with time and the effects of nature.
You might want to, Scott, do you have anything you want to add with regard to our waste acceptance criteria to help explain the rigor? You're good?
Yeah, no, I think David did.
Okay.
He's absolutely correct.
Okay.
You actually start with the answer and then you work backwards to come up with the individual concentrations. So he's absolutely correct.
Thanks.
Mr. Paulus, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Laura. Two questions. Going back, you said the existing is 2.1 million cubic yards. The new one's 2.4. Is that big enough?
Based on our projections, we believe it is. Now,
Is it too big? Is there a 10%?
we've added
growth factor,
25%,
or-
is it 25%? 25% contingency to our projections. So it could be 25% less if we were right on our projections, and we've got that cushion of being able to do 25% more. But
So you're expecting 1.8, which 25% more would take you to 2.4, approximately.
Yeah.
that's pretty much it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Number two, what's this bad boy costing?
What's the,
Or
life cycle is
budget?
like 800.
The life cycle, we have a couple of different versions of the RIFS.
Start with the construction.
No. Can you hear me? Okay, so the life cycle cost that was reported in the D2 RIFS of the facility, so that's from start to finish, everything, including the operation, construction, and so forth, was $817 million. That included a contingency factor. And we're working on the D3 RIFS. There are a few changes in that, and we're looking at somewhere around $1 billion for the life cycle cost. So
Does
that,
life cycle include the cost of filling it, compacting it,
Absolutely.
and the
Everything.
cover?
everything from
Yes.
start to finish. So it includes 23 years of operation.
Spendy hole in the ground.
Good questions there, Mr. Paulus. Who was next, Elfrida or Bob?
Yes.
Elfrida, you're up.
Laura,
Laura, this question has more to do with the stream and giving us some mental picture of how the engineering over or under or around that stream going through this new facility. How are you going to handle it?
Yeah, it's basically putting diversion, it's an under drain system that would divert the water from the waste using French drains. And you want to add to that?
The construction is an underdrain system that is going to go under the hydrogeologic buffer. So the stream itself is trenched. So you have a very deep, 10-foot deep trench, and it's filled with siliceous material that drains the water. And then there's also what's called a blanket drain. So that's kind of a wide area drain. So you've got a trench drain that goes deep and along the channel of the stream, and then you've got a blanket under drain.
So you're saying you're diverting the flow of the water?
It actually
Is
would
that-
drop the water table.
Okay.
It actually drop it way under the landfill itself.
Okay. The next question has to do with the waste forecast. And considering the beginning forecast for the development of the EMWMF, okay, how did, and you may not be able to answer this, but how did that original forecast that drove the capacity of this first facility, was it too high, too low? Any
Yeah.
idea?
I think that, I'll try to answer that. That was way before my time. But the main thing that happened when that facility was originally sited is that we did not have the plans for ORNL and Y12 because they had not declared a lot of facilities access to their mission that they later did. So at the time that the original facility was sited, the primary activity for cleanup was at ETTP with a handful of buildings at ORNL and Y12. And as we progressed in the planning and changes occurred at Y12 and ORNL where the sites were modernized and they were able to declare a lot of those old facilities excess, the projected inventory of waste went up.
Okay.
So that's why it wasn't captured in that original siting, and we're seeing ourselves now in a position where we have to site a new facility because all that inventory was not
Okay, so
part of the plan at the time.
considering the remodeling, tear down of the facilities at Y12 and ORNL and the rest of the EM work, this new facility, is there any guarantee that it's going to be large enough, or it probably covers the baseline waste?
Guarantees don't work.
Okay. Is there anything else that could happen where this one is not going to be large enough?
Yeah, I think we have a pretty comprehensive plan with quite a bit of data that we've been able to put together over the years for what is excess at ORNL and Y12 with a pretty significant look-ahead projection. So I think we're pretty well covered, but that doesn't mean that, 40 years from now, ORNL or Y12 may decide that there's another building they don't need. I think the bulk of the really old legacy facilities that supported the Manhattan Project and all those uranium development activities and all that have been accounted for. But then again, that doesn't mean that 40 years from now something won't change.
Okay, I think you know what I'm getting at here is,
Yeah, but I think we're pretty confident in the plan that we have put together and that it captures the majority of the Cold War legacy and Manhattan Project legacy at both those sites. With contingency.
If you look at, I think the question you're asking is, are we building enough capacity to get Oak Ridge cleaned up?
Exactly.
And when we developed the first cell, it was for a different scope. As Laura said, it was really just to get ETTP and for the most part ORNL and a little bit of work at Y12 cleaned up. Since then, the scope of the cleanup program has grown significantly. this would handle the latter volume. But if you go back to the first volume, the waste volume projections that were made for the first cell really bore out pretty well. We were estimating a little bit more than we needed, which is what you'd want. You'd always want to have a little bit more space than you need. And we have a pretty high degree of confidence that the new estimate for the larger cleanup program is also comfortably a little bit more than we'll ever need. The reality is that there aren't a lot of old decommissioned buildings left. In fact, there are minimal decommissioned buildings left to deal with once this new scope has been addressed. They could always build new facilities. They could always live beyond their useful life. There could always be new facilities needing to be taken down. But if you really look at the set of buildings that we propose now to include in the cleanup program, it's pretty exhaustive. And the buildings that are left are buildings that have enduring missions for the most part.
Thank you, Mr. Adler. Dr. Hatcher?
Okay, thinking back about your trade-offs in transportation risk versus on-site disposal, first of all, how are those probabilities arrived at? And then second, don't the probabilities change with the distance to the disposal site, off-site?
Do you want to address that one?
Yeah. The transportation risk is calculated, you're right, based on the number of miles that are traveled. We look at the actual path that's traveled. We look at the cities that are passed through. We look at all the populations. We look at their risk or accident rates in those different areas, depending on the populations and so forth. So we end up coming up with an actual number of deaths resulting from that many miles traveled.
Okay, but if suppose instead of using a model of disposal in Nevada, way out west somewhere, you went to Savannah River, and I know the state of South Carolina says, no, you can't do that, but so that changes the probability considerably just because of the distance and
Right.
and other factors.
Yeah, I guess we made assumptions based on the currently available disposal facilities
Okay,
to come up with those estimates.
okay, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Trujillo?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, great. See, the data you are trying to, the characterization data you're trying to get, is that mostly from the hydrogeology?
It's basically groundwater elevation data and some soil data.
Did you use or get any information from the existing one, since it's in the same vicinity? Was the site hydrogeology pretty similar or very different because of the stream, maybe?
Yeah, there's a wealth of information basis that was developed for the original facility and some data that is, periodically collected, and we've used all of that to inform the document preparation and what we've done today. So the answer is yes, we've considered all that information.
I was thinking basically in terms of how much money you can really save if you use data or information that's already obtained. So, all right, thank you.
Christoph?
I would like to add to Laura's answer that state of Tennessee is also collecting some hydrogeological data from the existing wells close to the first disposal facility. So trying to collect some additional data, and we're sharing with DOE and EPA.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to ask a question? Would you please state your name for the record?
My name is Rhonda Bogard. I'm a new member on the Environmental Quality Advisory Board for the City of Oak Ridge. I have a couple of questions, I guess, about the siting. Everything sounded great till we got to the part about the stream. And then you mentioned that there were a lot of other alternatives on the reservation that were considered. And I wondered what agencies and organizations have been involved, if any, with this site selection, because it sounds like the comment period will be only about this one possible site. that we won't be considering any other of the possible sites. So I was interested in who was involved in making that final selection.
Yeah, actually, the RIFAS, the Remedial Investigation Feasibility Study, includes the information on all the sites that were evaluated and what supported the conclusion on the proposed site. So when that document is issued to the regulators and the public, that would be an opportunity to provide comments on that whole siting process, not just on the proposed site.